All right then. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's meeting of Cabinet. I'd like to welcome everybody who's in the room, both members and officers, as well as members of the press and public, and also everyone who's joining us on live or watching the recording of this meeting. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to take attendance of officers attending virtually and to explain how proceedings will work.
Okay, good evening. Can I confirm the following officers joining remotely can hear us and we can hear them? Omar, is it? Omar, can you hear us?
I can, yes. Hello.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Debbie Coates
Hello, yes, I can hear you.
and Ian Cooper.
Yes, good evening.
Okay. Are there any other officers in attendance remotely tonight that I haven't called out? Okay. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. Are there any questions? Okay. I will now hand back to the chair.
Thank you very much. So item number 1, apologies for absence. I have received none, and I can see that all of my executive members are in attendance this evening. And our deputy member for Recycling and Waste, Councillor Tom Tyson, has also joined us. Thank you very much. Chair's announcements. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recording will be available on the North Herts YouTube website and the film recording via our YouTube channel. Members are reminded that this council has declared a climate emergency. This is a serious decision, and it means that, as this is an emergency, all of us, officers and members, have that in mind as we carry out various roles and tasks for the benefit of our district. More details are included on the agenda front sheet. Members are also reminded to make declarations of interest before an item, and the detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purposes of clarification, 4.823A of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, if a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of an item and still be able to vote upon that item. However, please be mindful of the business of the agenda and wherever possible leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. Right, brings us on to public participation. There's no public participation this evening. I am aware that Councillor Munster proposed some questions that he would have liked to have asked at this meeting. However, given the late submission of these questions and their quite technical nature, we'll be responding to those in writing outside of this meeting. Which brings us on to item number 4, which is the items that have been referred from other committees. Overview and Scrutiny has provided us with comments on a number of the items we're considering tonight. So the draft sustainability SPDs, the waste recycling street cleansing design in both parts 1 and parts 2, and also both parts of the leisure contract. I'll take each of the scrutiny referrals with the main agenda item to which it refers. Unfortunately, Councillor Compton can't be with us this evening, so I may ask if any colleagues wish to add context to what occurred at the scrutiny meeting when we come on to those items, if they were indeed present, in order to assist Cabinet in bringing the scrutiny reports to life. So, item number 6 is the draft sustainability SPD. I will ask Councillor Brown if you want to run through things, and then if colleagues have got any questions, queries on either the scrutiny report or Councillor Brown's report, then we can discuss those. Thank you, Reese.
Thank you, Chair. So the report you have before you makes 2 recommendations. The first is that the draft sustainability SPD be endorsed and approved for a 6-week public consultation starting in January. And secondly, that we endorse the Hertfordshire Development and Quality Charter, which has been produced by the Herts Growth Board. So just to add a few comments about those 2 items. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Cabinet Panel on the Environment for their input to the Sustainability SPD, which has been very helpful. And the things they suggested were taken into consideration in producing the draft. This Sustainability SPD reflects the current sustainability aspirations that we have as a council. You've just heard we declared a climate emergency and also an ecological emergency. And given that the local plan was written some time ago, and a lot of things have changed, it's important that we raise our aspirations regarding sustainability. The built environment accounts for about 25% of emissions, and so it's important that we seek to reduce these as much as possible. Obviously, it's better, easier, more convenient, cheaper to build well-insulated houses with good energy, renewable energies than it is to retrofit. And we also need to be thinking about our changing climate in terms of future-proofing what we're building. So we want to, this is part of our actions on the climate and ecological emergency, and it will provide more robust guidance for developers and hopefully drive up standards. If you want to, in 8.3, it talks about the detailed topics that are covered, which include zero carbon, energy efficiency, waste reduction, water efficiency, green infrastructure, wildlife and biodiversity conservation, climate change mitigation and adaptation. So there are going to be, it proposes 3 standards: the bronze, which is the minimum legal requirement, and silver and gold, which encourage developers to achieve higher standards than the minimum requirement. And we will consider those applications more favourably. That is the idea. And so there will be an incentive for developers to reach a higher standard. And when I go and talk to developers, they're actually asking us to say what we want, to set it out clearly, and all they ask for is a level playing field. So this is part of our approach to that. So the purpose of tonight, the purpose of the consultation with this document is not only to address the content and have comments about the content, but to look at the approach, the range of applications, and make recommendations for the approach in which the way in which we will use this. So, for example, will it be used for larger scale developments only, or a wider range of developments? So the public consultation will enable people to comment on that and what they feel is the best approach, and in what way we should apply it, as well as the content. I think that's an important thing to say. In terms of the Hertfordshire Development Quality Charter, this lovely document which I can wave at you, here you go. We, as I said, it's been developed by the Herts Growth Board. A number of councils, I think Dacorum and St Albans have already signed up to it, and I think Welwyn Hatfield are looking at signing up. And I would encourage us to adopt it early. It's more robust when a number of councils come together like this and set a minimum standard for quality. And again, as I say, when it's been discussed with developers, they're looking for us to say what we want, set out that standard, and for it to be a level playing field, so they're all clear about what we're expecting. So I think that's all I wanted to say, and with that I'd like to move the 2 recommendations that we send it for the Sustainability SPD for consultation, and that we endorse the Hertfordshire Development Quality Charter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, do we have any questions for Ruth? Councillor Willoughby.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question regarding the silver and gold and how that will be a positive consideration in the planning bounce. What is the protocol for giving that a better or more positive consideration? Does that come from the environmental aspect and purely through that, in that the recommendation will be that this should be approved on environmental matters, or is there another form of protocol that will take place with that?
So if you look in the appendix, you'll see that the criteria are very clearly set out. And the idea is that if those criteria are met for the silver or gold, then that will be positive consideration when the officers are looking at the planning balance. Because as you know, planning, when we consider planning applications, it's all about balance. So they will be a positive criteria, and it will be something that they can seek to attain. So the standards are set out. And so it's very clear objective criteria that they'll be measured against. And as I say, this sustainability SPD covers a wide range of things. It's not just about, there's going to be a design code later, which will be more about design of buildings, but this covers a much wider range of topics. So it will be all of those. And you'll see there are clearly criteria set against each one of them. Does that answer your question?
For the most part, yeah.
Thank you. I think that was one of the points that Councillor Crompton picked up
Yes.
on at scrutiny as well. And effectively what we're saying is this is the gold standard. This is what we really, in an ideal world, want all developers to be aiming for when they are working with us in North Herts. So any further questions for Ruth on this? See Councillor Jarvis, are you hovering or no? No. Okay. All right then. Okay. So, colleagues, if there's no further questions, I have two recommendations in front of us. I think we can take probably both of those together unless there are any objections. Okay. So I'm assuming you have proposed. Could I have a seconder, Councillor Hoskins? Thank you very much. Any debate? Nope. And in that case, please may we have a vote, James?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Which brings me on to item number 6, which is the exclusion of press and public. I propose that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the said act as amended. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Willoughby. Susan, can we have a vote?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Right, I shall ask members of the public if they could kindly leave the chamber, and we will place a holding card on the YouTube channel. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome back. So item number 8 is the waste recycling and street cleansing service design part 1 item. Excuse me. Unfortunately, as indicated, Councillor Compton isn't here to present the scrutiny report. Colleagues, I'm assuming you've had the opportunity to read and review the part 1 scrutiny report, and I would hope that people also had the opportunity to review the YouTube recording of the meeting from last week as well, if you weren't present. Does anybody have any sort of questions or points they want to raise in respect of this item at scrutiny? No, I'm seeing no comments or queries on the scrutiny item. In that case, I will pass over to Councillor Allen to present her report on this.
Thank you, Chair. This report is an updated report following a recommendation from Overview and Scrutiny, seeking decisions from Cabinet today rather than delegating those decisions to the Director of Place and Project Board. The waste recycling and street cleansing service represents the largest spend on service contracts each financial year. It is a high-profile service which impacts on residents every week. As well as being a service in view of the public every day and having a significant impact on the Council's finances, it also has significant impacts and influences on the Council's ability to achieve its carbon reduction and sustainability aims for the district by reducing waste and recycling more, reducing the carbon impacts of sending residual waste to landfill or energy from waste facilities. The decisions made in relation to this contract not only affect our partners, East Herts Council, but also wider stakeholders such as Hertfordshire County Council, who bear the cost of residual waste disposal. During the summer of 2022 and prior to the finalisation of the contract specification, officers, worked with members across the political parties and from our partners at East Herts Council to help design services which would meet our financial and environmental sustainability objectives. Officers have subsequently taken our specification to the market through a competitive procurement process and are currently in dialogue with bidders. It is apparent that despite areas of the specification being changed to balance risk and to mitigate contract cost increases, the proposed service design presents affordability issues for the Council. As a consequence, this report provides members details of the specification changes required to deliver savings on the anticipated contract costs. This report is not about cuts or savings against the current budget. This report is aimed only at reducing the burden of significant cost increases that the Council will face if changes are not made at this stage of the procurement. Officers and I are confident these changes will still provide high-performing services. Indeed, the waste and recycling service design proposed gives residents more opportunity to recycle by providing more recycling capacity. Many of the other proposals merely allow bidders more flexibility in their operations. Given the commercial sensitivity, any discussions regarding anticipated cost mitigation have been in part 2. Officers and I are seeking decisions from Cabinet on the recommendations identified in the report proposals, as they are considered to be the most financially sustainable solution for the Council. Following any decisions both here at North Herts Council's Cabinet and at East Herts Council's Executive, the specification will be finalised. Our procurement timeline is tight and members are asked to be mindful of the significant negative impacts that can result from procurement delays, given the magnitude of work required to mobilise a new contract of this size. And I would like to take this opportunity to extend mine and Councillor Tom Tyson's thanks to Sarah Kingsley, Chloe Hipwood and the officers in our team for the work they've put into this for the last couple of years. Your dedication and commitment has not gone unnoticed. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Allen? Councillor Willoughby.
I'm hopeful that this can be answered by at least someone. Obviously, I'm looking at the risk implications 11.2 regarding the DEFRA details of their proposals in relation to simpler recycling solutions. Sorry. And I see that there's an unexpected announcement that there'll be a consultation. Obviously, it's not particularly helpful that that's unexpected, and it's not particularly helpful that we don't know what's going to happen with that. And obviously, we can say what we like about national government throwing stuff at us. This is context for a question, I promise. Do we actually know, if they're doing this consultation, do we actually know when that consultation is due to end that DEFRA is doing? I'm aware that obviously there are other things going on, but if that ends before this contract gets taken up, comes into operation, how will we be able to change the contract in line with that?
So the short answer is we don't know when the outcome of the consultation will be known. And unfortunately, history tells us that there could well be some prolonged delay in actually having clarity on that. We are, however, hopeful that because the government is introducing a extended producer responsibility scheme, which impacts on local government funding, that there will be a more expedience, shall we say, in an outcome. But the proposals we've put forward in the current contract is for an option for what we call an anticipated change, which means that if we need to make an alternative decision, we still have an opportunity to do that. That decision would, however, need to be made fairly swiftly after contract award, and in the event that the statutory guidance came out with a clear indication that a minimum of fortnightly residual waste collections was the preferred approach for local authorities, then we would come back to Cabinet for a further decision. But ultimately, our current specification around 3 weekly residual waste collections presents us with significant financial and environmental benefits, and therefore we're keen to progress with that while we feel that that is, legally permissible.
Thank you. It's actually a following on question, if I can. The extended, sorry if I get the name wrong, the extended producer responsibility. Have I got that right? Thank you. I'm sorry if it's in the report and I've missed it. Obviously, it's quite a lot here. Obviously, the government has been promising to do that for quite some time, and each time seems to grab it back from our clutches just as it's sort of coming forward. Do we know when that will actually be being brought in?
Now, hopefully I've got my correct Octobers, but I believe it comes into force in October 2024. The data requirements are already in place, so businesses are required to report on their packaging that they're putting into the marketplace currently. What we don't yet know is what the fee system is going to look like, and essentially that's the information we don't know. Councils, we know, are going to be required to demonstrate that they are operating what has been termed efficient and effective services, but we don't know what that means yet. And until, of course, we know what that means and what the impacts are for us in relation to that calculation, then we can't fully judge the impacts. So, we would anticipate that, efficient and effective would be all the things that we've included in our consideration of this service design. But obviously at this stage, we're still a little in the dark.
And just sort of following on from that, could you just remind me where the government is with the deposit return scheme, and have we had any sort of further indication of any new burdens funding or support that local authorities will receive in the event that we're forced to change plans because government has taken far too long to get simpler recycling or the resource and waste strategy through?
So in relation to deposit return schemes, the government has indicated it still wishes to consider implementation for 2025. At this stage, industry feels that that is an unlikely deadline to be hit, but that is certainly the government's indication at this stage. In relation to new burdens funding, at the moment the government has only indicated that there will be new burdens funding for new food waste collections which have started post April 2023, for which of course our partners East Herts Council will be considered. But again, we've had no clarity on what new burdens funding will look like. We were expecting an announcement in December, which we are halfway through. Ever optimistic that we will get clarity soon, but that's as much as we know at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Willoughby.
So just to clarify, because I know there's a lot there, and so we've got to take on quite a bit of a burden. It's an increasing cost for us for this service and across various services in the council. But to just be really clear, the government is not going to be providing anything additional so that we could provide a previous level of service. It's got to change.
So, broadly speaking, the government hopes that the Extended Producer Responsibility Scheme will provide new funding for local authorities to improve their collection of packaging waste. And obviously, as part of our service design, we have proposed to collect soft plastics, which the government are mandating from 2027. We'll introduce it in 2025 to support our obviously 3 weekly collection service. There is no anticipated new burdens funding for that. But as I said, the government is anticipating that extended producer responsibility will, broadly speaking, support councils in delivering that.
There we go. So I think we're in a position of knowing that we've got an expensive service, we've got changes that we need to make in order to meet changes in government legislation, and actually we're going to be ahead of the curve in respect of certain things such as collecting soft plastics. But once again, central government isn't funding or supporting local government to the extent that it would be helpful for it to do. I think we're out of questions. No, Councillor Brown's got a question.
I've got a question. Thank you. So items 8H and HI talk about change to the SLA regarding bin delivery repairs and missed bins. And I noticed there's a bit of an explanation at 8.36. But I just wondered what impact do we think that will have on residents, that the reduction, having to wait longer for a bin to be collected if it's missed and having to wait longer for a repair? What it will be the impact on residents?
In terms of miscollections, obviously I can't speak in detail about what the bidders are proposing in their submissions, but broadly speaking, because we know that the majority of bidders will consider working zonally, we're not expecting miscollections to impact on residents, still being bidders wanting to make the most efficient collection of that miscollection, and thereby doing it closely if you're operating a zone that runs a little bit like a clock. That didn't make sense very well, did it? It makes sense in my head. But what we do expect is that the bidders will essentially reduce their risk pricing against the performance management regime. So it still obviously means that they will be swift in trying to rectify things like miscollections, but we are not anticipating that they'll actually take that time to actually do it. It's more that they will reduce risk pricing against that risk of being caught by the performance management regime if they don't quite hit the targets.
Okay, so there's a benefit to us on pricing and no serious negative impacts to residents on service levels.
Yeah, it's not anticipated. I mean, there is the possibility that if you have a miscollection, it will take longer to be rectified, but we are not, feedback from bidders has indicated that that's not going to be the normal. It's going to be not going to be the normal. In terms of the other question around bin deliveries, it will mean that, it could take slightly longer for bin deliveries. One of the things that members may well already be aware of is that we already have significant issues with stock delays. So we will often be ordering bins months in advance. Will be given a lead time of maybe 12 weeks, and 24 weeks later they finally arrive. So we have had disruption to bin deliveries, but broadly speaking, residents have, been able to cope, and we obviously get our bin deliveries out as soon as we can. And again, operating on a zonal system means bidders can just operate a little bit more efficiently rather than dashing from one side of the district to another to deliver a few bins, rather than, storing a few up to deliver at the same time. One of the things we are keen to do is make sure that there isn't a scenario where a resident, if their bin, for example, goes into the back of a vehicle, that they wouldn't have that bin for their next collection. So we want to make sure that the SLA fits in with that, so they'll always have a bin for their next collection if they've had to store waste in the garage or something in the meantime.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions? Nope. Okay, I'm going to assume boldly that Councillor Allen is proposing those recommendations. Do I have a seconder? I see Councillor Jarvis. Thank you very much. Okay, so colleagues, any debate or sort of points that were not questions that you'd like to make? Councillor Albert.
Just thanks, Chair. And I think the point that you set out in one of your earlier comments around, do we wish that government was funding local authorities properly and sufficiently? Yes, we do. And hopefully maybe a general election fairly soon will help actually resolve some of those issues. But we've got the practical, here we are dealing with the practical outturn of what has happened over the last 13 years of Conservative governments, and we as a council, working with our colleagues in East Herts, have got to resolve those issues for the benefit of residents. I'd like obviously to join Councillor Allen's thanks to Sarah, to Chloe, and all the team of officers, Jeanette and her legal team, that have been involved in what has been a hugely difficult piece of work so far, and has been done extraordinarily well and efficiently. I think Councillor Allen set it out absolutely correctly, that what we're aiming here still to do and remain to do, as set out in our aspirations for our service in Appendix 1, is a quality service but an affordable service for residents. There's no point in driving this council into financial ruin. We need to make sure that we've got an affordable service. But the key part here is it's actually a service that works well for residents, because that is what this council, and I'm sure our colleagues in East Herts are about. And I think that's why I'm assured that the changes that we are proposing here around for the negotiations with potential providers are the right ones to look at. It provides those additional flexibilities, and indeed I'm sure that that the providers that we will be in dialogue with will look to be able to improve upon those things. And I think that's very much part of the scene here, of the dialogue that we'll be going through, and officers will be going through in the coming months. So I'm very much happy to endorse these recommendations in front of us here. I think it does leave us not, as I think our MP, as Mr. Affolami has said, that the worst service, the worst waste service in the eastern region, actually, as Councillor Dennis has set out, actually that we're ahead of the game on a number of the areas. And I think, message to Mr. Affolami is, you're the economic secretary at the Treasury, actually help us fund local authorities properly, and we can actually deliver even more for residents. So very happy to support these proposals here, Chair, and I hope that we obviously endorse those unanimously. Clearly, there's still a lot of work still to be done on this, and when it comes back to us later in next year. But I say I'm very happy to endorse the recommendations in the report. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Albert. Goodness me. Political statements in one of my cabinet meetings. Who'd have thought it? No, I think Councillor Albert has made a very valid point there, because actually we have a statutory duty to deliver waste collection to our residents. But local government finances have become so tight that we are now constantly asking ourselves, how do we maintain the things that we know add value to our residents' lives and continue to deliver statutory services at the level that people require? And I think one of the things that I'm proud of at this council is that we do put people first, and we take that creative and flexible approach. And rather than just sitting back and go, oh gosh, we've got particular bids in, this is how much waste is going to cost us moving forwards, what are we going to cut? What we've actually done is work incredibly hard to find positive solutions. But what does hamstring us is that massive uncertainty that Chloe was discussing with us in the question section around what the government is doing with the resource and waste strategy, or simpler recycling, or Rishi's 7 bins, or whatever it is that it's going to be called this week or or next week. And I think it's an absolute travesty that central government is getting in the way of local government doing the best for our residents. And I'm quite pleased that we have got flexibility built into some of these recommendations should government choose to change its mind yet again. Right, that's two political statements on one item. I'm going to throw to Councillor Jarvis, who I'm hoping is going to be maybe less political.
Doesn't seem very likely to me. I mean, I think I agree with what's been said about the whole issue around local government funding. I have to say I don't share Councillor Albert's optimism that this is going to be fixed anytime soon, whatever happens. But I think clearly we've got some proposals here that go some way towards addressing some of the issues we have. And I think that they have some positive benefits in terms of what is delivered. I think that the proposed arrangements for collecting a bin every week of a different type, I think overcomes some of the issues which I think residents raised quite legitimately about the complication of having some bins on a 2-weekly cycle and some on a 3-weekly cycle. And how would anyone know which bins to put out a particular week? So I think we've increased people, what we're proposing, well, the proposal would increase people's recycling capacity. It would make the service easier to use. It will drive up rates of recycling. So I think there's some real positives there. And the fact it saves some money makes it even better. I think in terms of the other changes, I mean, broadly, there are some changes to cleaning of town centres, which we expect to achieve the same results at less money, and not spending more money than we need on things ought to be an advantage. And in terms of litter bins, there's quite a lot of research that suggests that more litter bins results in more litter. And if we can provide acceptable levels of litter collection with fewer bins and costing people less money so we can spend it on something else, then that also seems to me to be a benefit. So I think that there are some real positive benefits in making these changes that will either deliver the same or better in terms of the real benefit to people, as well as getting us a little closer to being able to do it within the resources that we've got. So I think from that point of view, I'm entirely happy to support these changes.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I'll remind colleagues as well that I think in 21-22, we were 5th best in the country for our recycling rates, or somewhere in a league table, I think. So we were quite high, weren't we?
Not quite that high, unfortunately. But yes, we're not quite in the top 10, but certainly, we do perform particularly well. And I think one of the key points is actually our residual or household waste per head is actually less than the top performing council. So, our waste reduction when it comes to residual waste has been, is quite an achievement. It's just not that's not the target that we use when we're comparing each other.
So there you have it. By no means the worst, and in fact, leading the way in a number of areas. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So, yeah, that's welcome. And I do, what Chloe's just said about it's not just about recycling more, it's actually about reducing waste. We want to reduce our overall waste, don't we, as well as reuse and recycle more. So I think one of the things I really welcome about this new design is the closer alignment with East Herts and the shared service that's bringing more efficiencies. I think we have identified that there are things that could be better aligned, and this service design and this contract does that. So those efficiencies and cost savings are welcome. I think what we have here is a service that will meet the needs of our residents. It might not meet all their wants, but it will meet their needs, which is important in our people first priority. And even the thing that I'm even more delighted about is it's going to reduce our carbon emissions. It's going to encourage the people to recycle more and to reduce their overall waste consumption. So I fully support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have just been helpfully reminded as well that the new Office for Local Government has actually asked us to present to other local authorities on our waste contract because we are doing so well and we are innovating in this particular space. So if Oflog, which is going to be, gosh, hopefully not the Audit Commission, thinks that North Herts is doing the right thing, well, I think we're on the right track, hopefully, fingers crossed. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just quickly, thank you very much for the support, everyone. Just reflecting off of Councillor Jarvis's comments and specifically about meeting the needs, and also Councillor Brown's now comments about meeting needs. Yes, the big focus has been on about what the needs are in the district, not necessarily the wants. And with the change up that one of the most exciting change ups being that the fibre bin is going to have a lid, so no more soggy paper. That's really exciting. And the resounding success so far of the Flex Collect trial that we're doing, and residents are seeing the reduction of waste in their purple bin. It makes such a massive, massive difference. There's all elements of positivity and good coming out of all of this. It's really exciting. It's going to get to the stage at some point in the future, we hope, the purple bins are going to be empty half the year. So fingers crossed.
All right, so I'm seeing nobody else indicating to speak. I think that was an excellent debate with somebody that's not currently in the room, unfortunately. But I think we'll continue pushing and presenting the same arguments to central government, and hopefully the work that we do with Oflog will deliver results on this as well, and we will get support for the sector. So, colleagues, we have had the recommendations proposed and seconded. Are we content to go to a vote? I'm seeing nobody else want to debate things. Good. Susan, could we have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And that brings us on to, I believe, looking at this, yes, item number 9, which once again is the exclusion of press and public. So, as I said earlier this evening, I would like to propose that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the said act as amended. Can I have a seconder? I see Councillor Brown indicating.
Happy to second that.
Excellent. Thank you. Could we have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you. I'm assured Councillor Jarvis did indeed vote. If I could ask members of the press and public to leave the room, and we will place a holding card on the YouTube channel again. Thank you, colleagues. Right. Thank you very much, everyone. And once again, welcome back to members of the public, both in the room and joining us virtually this evening. So item number 11 is the Waste Management Contract Award Part 1. Again, sorry. I did say waste management. I am so sorry. It said there was a word beginning with W on here. It's actually wait. And I confused that with what I'm actually looking at. Bear with me. There we go. Start again. Good. Item number 11 is the Leisure Management Contract Award, Part 1. Once again, we have a referral from Overview and Scrutiny, which I'm sure colleagues have read with interest, and I hope that everyone had the opportunity to view the recording of the meeting if you were not able to be there in person. Does anyone have any questions or queries on the report we've received from Scrutiny? Nope. Right. I shall then hand over to Councillor Jarvis to present his report.
Thank you. The current contracts for managing the council's leisure facilities in Hitchin, Letchworth and Royston runs out at the end of March this year. So we've been in the process of procuring an operator to run those facilities from April. The first stage of that was to do the work which resulted in the Active North Herts strategy, which we agreed earlier this year, since that forms an important part of what we are expecting the new operators to deliver. We started the process back before the summer with 5 leisure operators initially involved in the process. At the end of the first stage, that was reduced to 3, not including the current operator, Stevenage Leisure. And one of those 3 subsequently withdrew from the process because they felt they didn't have sufficient capacity to continue in it, which left us with 2 bidders who we've taken through the rest of the process, who have produced final bids that are where the quality, the social value and the price has been evaluated. That's been done by a team of officers, and there will be many others involved, but clearly Sarah Kingsley and Louise Randall are the 2 that have been most involved in that activity, supported by other officers and consultants from an organisation called SLC, who have provided us with some valuable advice about the procurement of these sorts of contracts, which are clearly not something that we do on a regular basis, and also provided us with some very useful insights into customer practice elsewhere, what sort of responses we might expect from bidders, whether or not some of the responses we got were in line with what the industry would expect, which I think provides very useful information. As I said, procuring leisure contracts is not something we do on a frequent basis, so it's really useful to get some input from people who are involved in that regularly. So we have a preferred bidder, which we've identified in the Part 2 report. So assuming we agree that should go forward, there is then a standstill period. So the identity of that preferred bidder cannot be announced until the start of January. Because there is a standstill process where any bidder can object to some flaw in the process. I think the only other thing I wanted to say was, as I said, a big thank you to the team that have worked on the procurement, who I think have done a great job in terms of getting us some good proposals from a quality and finance point of view. And I think it's also important to put on record our thanks to Stevenage Leisure, who've operated our leisure facilities very successfully for more than 10 years, I think it is. I forget exactly how long it is, but a significant period. And we've worked with them very well. There is clearly going to be a change, but I think obviously many of the staff who've been involved will remain involved. But Stevenage Leisure have done a great job for us over the last few years. So I think that's probably all I need to say at this point.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Councillor Jarvis? Councillor Brown?
I think I've got 3 questions. So the first relates to staffing. So what can you say around the expected standards and level of staffing that are in the have been required as part of the tender process? And again, will it be similar to what it is now? Will it be different, or is that a purely operational matter to be decided by the successful bidder? Secondly, the operational model of the way the centres will run, will they still be offering sort of social prescribing opportunities, elite athlete opportunities, sort of mixed use where people can so I see there's a 10% for social value. So what kind of activities will those continue? Because currently there are a lot of activities like that, like a men's health club and things for teenagers and young children and older people and those kinds of things. So what can you comment about what's in the what has been required of the bidders in that respect in terms of community and social value? And then thirdly, what are we asking in terms of development of the centres? For example, we've had some money set aside for a gym extension at Royston for some time. There's been talk about a possibility of a learner pool. What kind of development is going to be expected of our bidders of the 3 centres that they would be contracted to run?
So some of those questions I'm going to ask Sarah to answer. But I think, I mean, in terms of staffing, I mean, I think what we do is we specify what the outputs are to be in terms of how the centres are to be run. There certainly were some questions relating to social value about employment of people who'd not been in employment. There are some requirements in terms of delivering training. There are also some social value requirements about carbon reduction as well. That's a different matter. The operational models, I think, are essentially unchanged. There are a few areas where there are some changes in flexibility. And the third one, in terms of developments, I can't remember what I'm allowed to say in part 1, so I'll hand that one over to Sarah.
So in terms of developments, yes, we've got capital funding allocated for the Royston Gym extension. It's fair to say both bidders in their submissions provided additional capital investment which they would put into the facilities. I can't specify what that is currently, but obviously that will all become clear once the standstill period is finished. We didn't take forward the Royston Learner Pool into the final tenders. However, there may be an opportunity to consider the business case of that in the future. I think that's probably what we can say on development. Just on your point, Councillor Brown, about the operational model, I think it's important to stress that this contract is leisure and active communities, and active communities element is really important, and both bidders provided really comprehensive responses on how they will develop programmes which seek to assist with programmes which will assist with people who are either physically inactive or not as active, targeting different areas of the district, targeting different age groups. They both have very comprehensive programmes, and I think that will become very clear that it was a priority for both bidders. And it's not just about the leisure centres, it's about outreach activities which they will be delivering in the communities as well.
Right. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions? No. So I will boldly assume, Councillor Jarvis, are you proposing the recommendation?
I am.
Excellent. And do I have a seconder, please? I'll take Councillor Albert. Thank you very much. All right. So proposed, seconded. Do we have any debate on this item? Seeing nobody indicate for debate. Right. Could we have a vote then, please, Susan, on the recommendation?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Right. Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of this evening's agenda. As I am reminded, both by the two very snazzy Christmas jumpers that are being sported by Councillor Albert and Councillor Hoskins, but also by Councillor Brown's fantastic Christmas tree earrings. This is our last cabinet meeting indeed of the year, but also the final cabinet meeting that we're going to be having prior to the Christmas festive season. So I guess it falls to me to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I will look forward to working with you all in the new year. I will probably see some of you at some point over the course of the next 3 weeks, but if I don't, have a good Christmas. See you soon.